I'd like to share with you 3 tips on how to approach anti-Semitism, anti-Semites, Jew haters. And these 3 tips actually come straight from the Torah, straight from the Bible. It comes actually from the very first Passover Seder that we as Jewish people had ever celebrated in Egypt the night before the Exodus. The night before the Exodus, there was the plague, the slaying of the firstborn, and the Jewish people were commanded to slaughter a Passover ram, to eat it together as families, and there was a commandment to actually stay home. They're not allowed to leave. That night, the slaying of the firstborn of the Egyptians who were enslaving us was going to take place. They were given fair warning. And our job is to stay home, and there's a specific biblical prohibition of leaving the home that evening. And the question the commentaries ask is why? Why can't we witness the miracle of our enemies being overthrown? Why stay home? And I'd like to share with you 3 perspectives, and I think these 3 perspectives are actually 3 approaches to how we strengthen ourselves as Jews and approach anti-Semitism and Jew haters. Approach number 1 is from the Abarbanel. Why do you need to stay home that evening? Because what is our job this evening? The very first Passover Seder, to eat the Passover lamb in thanks to God, to eat the matzah, to eat the maror, the bitter herbs, to discuss the Passover story. At that point, they're living the Passover story. Our job is not to witness the death of our enemies. Our job is not to tune into the news and figure out what exactly is going on. We don't worship death. Death is necessary, unfortunately. Because if people are oppressing us, and if people are causing us death, we have a commandment to do what is necessary. But we don't need to make our religion center around it. We don't worship death. Shut off the news, shut off the phone, shut off the computer. Be at the Passover Seder and just be totally present, living in the moment. Because it's at that moment, at that night, at the Passover Seder, that we're ingesting the matzah, we're discussing our story, we're internalizing what it means to be a Jew, our story, our history, our faith, and how it relates to the present. We don't need to know what's going on outside. There's a biblical commandment: stay home. Explanation number 2. I really enjoyed this one. It's by the Tzvar Omarer. It's one of the commentaries. His name is Rav Avraham Sabah from Portugal. And he explains what's going to happen if you're going to be out that night, witnessing the slaying of the firstborn. Think about it. What's going to happen is Pharaoh's going to try to find you and say, okay, you guys can go free. Please get out of here. No, we're not doing that. We're going to stay home. Pharaoh's not going to come to you. You're going to be in your home. And you're not going to be free because Pharaoh says you're free. You're going to be free tomorrow in broad daylight when God says you're free. We're going to achieve on that night fundamental freedom rather than permissive freedom from our enemies. We're not free when our enemies tell us we're free. We're free because God tells us we're free. As Jews, we don't have a right to exist because society agrees that we have a right to exist. We have an inherent right to exist. Israel has a right to exist not because the UN claims they have a right to exist. There's a fundamental right to exist from God. And therefore, don't be out of your house. Stay in your house because you're not free yet until God says you're free. And I think as this relates to us, it's so important to understand that we don't need to justify our existence as Jewish people to haters, because it's not them who gives us permission to be. It's God who gives us permission to be. We need to stay in our homes. We need to strengthen the home. And that brings me to the 3rd explanation by the Lubavitcher Rebbe, who explains that the Passover offering, Passover ram, is actually an anomaly compared to all other sacrifices, because all other sacrifices had to have been done on an altar. This is the only time in history that a sacrifice is not done on an altar, but it's done in the home. Because this is the start of the Jewish people. And the foundation, the start of the Jewish people begins at home. So the Torah says, stay home. Don't go out to witness the slaying of the firstborn. Be focused on what's going on the inside. What is happening in your own home? Focus on doing the Passover mitzvahs, of eating the matzah, of telling the story, of celebrating who we are, of learning about who we are. Because as we become a people, the exodus from Egypt, it's at this moment that we have to strengthen the inside. We have to strengthen the home. And when we do that, we become confident as Jewish people. We become proud as Jewish people. And we simply don't need the validity of Jew haters, the validity of the UN, the validity of trolls on social media, the validity of brainwashing and desensitized college professors and brainwashed college students and protest. We just don't care. We're stronger than that because we've strengthened our identity at the home. This all starts with having a meaningful Passover Seder, doing the Passover mitzvahs, eating the matzah. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.